Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari. Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari. Jasodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Sodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jai Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari. Jai Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari. Yasodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Sodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Varivajaka Charja Astarasi Sri Maharaj Divine Grace of Bhai Charanarvad Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Gantara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai Sri Rukmini Dwarkadish Ki Jai Tai Gauravimanandi. All glories to the Sammal devotees. All glories to the Sammal devotees. All glories to the Sammal devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Nama Om Vishnu Vadaya Krishna Padasaya Vadaya Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitanamini Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Vacharini Deve Sesha Sundari Pastatare Shatarini. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 5, text number 3. The chapter is entitled Narada's Instructions on Srimad Bhagavatam. Number 3. 153, correct. Jignasitam susampanam api te mahadadbhutam kritavan bharatam yas twang sarvata paribringhitam Jignasitam susapanam apite mahadadbhutam kritavan bharatang yastvang savarta paribringhitam Jignasitam susampanam apite mahadadbhutam kritavan bharatang yastvang sarvarta paribringhitam jignasitam susampanam apite mahadadbhutam kritavan bharatang yastvang sarvarta paribringhitam jignasitam susampanam apite mahadadbhutam kritavan bharatang yastvang sarvarta paribringhitam susampanam kritavan bharatang yastam sarvarta paribringhitam jignasitam susampanam Ladies, sarvarta paribringhitam jignasitam fully inquired Susangpanam, well versed. Api, in spite of. Te, your. Mahadadbhutam, great and wonderful. Kritavan, prepared. Bharatam, the Mahabharat. Yaktvam, what you have done. Sarva Artha, including all sequences. Paribringhitam, elaborately explained. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. No doubt your inquiries were full and your studies also well fulfilled. Since you have prepared a great and wonderful work, the Mahabharata, which is full of all kinds of Vedic sequences elaborately explained. Purport. The despondency of Vyasadeva was certainly not due to his lack of sufficient knowledge, because as a student he had fully inquired about the Vedic literatures, as a result of which the Mahabharata is compiled with full explanation of the Vedas. If there's no objection, this next verse is also very closely related, and then the following verse after that goes off into Srila Vyasadeva's response, so I'm just going to do this verse also, text number 4. Jignasitam aditang cha brahma yatat sanatanam tatapi sochatmanan sochasi atmanam akritarta iva prabhu. Translation. You have fully delineated the subject of impersonal Brahman, as well as the knowledge derived therefrom. Why should you be despondent in spite of all this, thinking that you are undone, my dear Prabhu? Purport. The Vedanta Sutra or Brahma Sutra compiled by Sri Vyasadeva is the full deliberation of the impersonal absolute feature, and it is accepted as the most exalted philosophical exposition in the world. It covers the subject of eternity, and the methods are scholarly. So there cannot be any doubt about the transcendental scholarship of Vyasadeva. So why should he lament? Om Jnanatamidandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshun Militam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namah. Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Langayate Girim Yadkipatamamande Sigirim Dinataranam Paramanadamadamam Shri Chaitanya Ishvaram. So, we've been hearing so very nicely and thoroughly over the last few days about how Srila Vyasadeva is been despondent even though as we're reading here, and Srila Prabhupada explained earlier, that being a great son of a great father, there was no real cause. Which is important to point out, and we've heard it again, but it's nice to hear it again, that Srila Vyasadeva was a great son, obviously, in that he produced such a fine literature, but that his father, Parasara Muni, was also a very great sage. So it's important that there be a good offspring in society. Unfortunately, in the present age, because of the so many irreligious activities going on, that the offspring are not very desirable. In many cases, accidental. Oh, we didn't intend to have you. Unfortunately, that's the case in present society because of the uncontrolled activities of the general mass of people. So many unwanted children, and unqualified children for that matter, because of unqualified parents, are produced. It's not an accident that the age is progressively getting worse and more chaotic. Because there's no training. Right now I think there's a real fad about finding your lineage. Isn't it? There's something out there that you can go online and something.com, you can find out who you were or who your ancestors were. Everybody's into that nowadays. You can also purchase 12 months of research, or a 12-month period where you can research who your ancestors were. And of course, many people are surprised. They think they were this, but actually they were that. And sometimes that was not so pleasant. This is not, of course, the case with Vyasadeva, being the son of Parasara, a great sage, and himself being empowered. Srila Prabhupada describes Shaktivesh avatar, that he was empowered to disseminate such a wonderful literature as the Vedanta Sutra, which, as Prabhupada points out here, is accepted as the most exalted philosophical exposition in the world. Srila Prabhupada sometimes comments that, I think there was some comment of, he quotes some Chinese person or some European person, that if you want to know religion, go to India. Right? Something like that. Chinese scholar. So, no doubt, going to India and because of this history, because of the Lord appearing there, enacting so many wonderful pastimes, being assisted by so many transcendental personalities coming from the heavens. It's a very great atmosphere and opportunity, and of course rendition, describing the absolute truth, which is not a light thing. There are so many studies out there, right? They're trying to discover what the universe is all about, and they're trying to discover this thing, that thing, although they can't even figure out what gravity is. They pride themselves in so many discoveries, but they can't even figure out what gravity is. To get this sort of information, what is the nature of the absolute truth, how devotional service continues after liberation, how the living entity is by nature pleasure-seeking, and how the absolute truth, how the Lord is there even in the fire of digestion. All of this information is given there in the Vedic literatures, how we are by nature joyful personalities. But of course, none of this information is there in present society. Instead, science tries to figure out that it's because you have some imbalance let me give you a few drugs and we'll balance this. This is their solution. Whereas in the Vedic, from Vedic information, we understand that it's because we're the living entity, as Prabhupada points out here in the previous verse, has identified with the body and the mind. And the body and mind by nature is a miserable condition. It's just by nature, its quality is to be temporary. Dukhalayam ashashvatam, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. It's temporary and full of misery. So there's no such thing as trying to solve that imbalance in a material sense, in a material way. Instead, one has to develop a transcendental knowledge, which again is revealed there in the Vedanta Sutra. But again, this is all fantasy to modern science, to modern knowledge, present-day society. So, all this being said, how is it that Srila Vyasadeva is experiencing some despondency here? And Srila Prabhupada gives the answer in the purport here by pointing out that it was not due to his sufficient knowledge, because no doubt he was very scholarly in order to just produce the Vedic library requires vast intelligence beyond what the common person can understand. So he was definitely qualified in that respect. And Prabhupada further supports that by pointing out how in the Mahabharata, all the Vedic literatures are present and fully explained. And of course that is condensed in the form of the Bhagavad Gita. That is what Srila Prabhupada is making point here, at least from what I can understand. Of course, the Mahabharata is a wonderful piece of literature, and it gives so many descriptions and sequences of events during those times, thousands of years ago. But the most important aspect of it all is the Bhagavad Gita, in which the Supreme Lord Himself reveals Himself and explains the position of the living being, and that is that we are part and parcel. Krishna says, "Vamaya angsa jiva loke," that we're a part and parcel, that we're meant to be engaged in devotional service. Srila Prabhupada points out here that the Vedanta Sutra, which is compiled by Srila Vyasadeva, is a full deliberation of the impersonal absolute feature. And although it's fully revealing the absolute truth for the common person, it was too complicated, as we'll read later on in this chapter. Therefore, and as we heard in previous classes, therefore Srila Vyasadeva produced the Srimad Bhagavatam, because again, the Vedanta Sutra, being in its code form, it's not possible for the common person to understand it. Not possible. Nowadays, for the common person, people can barely figure out what to do tomorrow, what their life is for, what kind of job they should have in life, or what school they should go to. Even the most common things are such a complicated dilemma for most people. What to speak of trying to inquire into what is the absolute truth? What is the goal of life? What is transcendental pleasure? What do you mean transcendental? All these things, of course, are way beyond the general mass of people. Therefore, Srila Vyasadeva had to condense it and make it more accessible to the common person by producing the Srimad Bhagavatam. There's a wonderful verse in the first canto in which the sages, Sutta Goswami describes Tas Chadadana Munayo Jnana Vairagya Yuktaya. He explains that the seriously inquisitive student who's well equipped with knowledge and detachment, this is important, that one has to be serious about understanding the goal of life. It's not that we just sort of take a few minutes every now and then, when there's not an important thing happening in the news, when there's not an important game happening, or when I don't have to go and buy something. People are now obsessed with buying all sorts of presents for some odd reason. So they're distracted by so many things. But if one is actually serious and is well equipped, just like if you want to go out and fix something, or you want to accomplish a goal, you have to be well equipped, right? You have to have the right tools. You can't just go outside and start working on your car with a pencil. You need the proper tools. Ask Ratnabhushana. He's got every tool in his garage. If you go inside of his garage, he's got every tool you can imagine. And he can address every problem. So similarly, to understand the problems of this material world, of this body and mind, one has to be well equipped with knowledge and detachment. That has to be there. And equipped with the right tools, one can realize the absolute truth by rendering devotional service, or by some practical application of it, in the form of what in terms of what he's heard from the Vedanta Sutra. Is so important. The Vedanta Sutra, again, is giving us whatever we need to know in this day and age. Everything, really, even the most practical things. How to live practically day to day, how to address the various needs that one has in life, and how to obtain them, and how to use them properly. All of this, again, is being given by the great sages, and specifically here by Srila Vyasadeva. So why is he lamenting? He's giving all of this. Again, the answer we've heard and will be explained further by Srila Prabhupada in the coming verses, is that he didn't sufficiently describe the personality of Godhead and our relationship with the personality of Godhead, and how one should act on that relationship through a devotional service. There's a very funny little story that I heard from Naikatma Prabhu. I was discussing with him some time back, and he was relating to me a story that he heard about Rajiv Gandhi. I'm sure some of us have heard it before, but when he first became Prime Minister, he decided that he would go to a prison. And at the prison, he would ask different prisoners to wish for one thing. Of course, being Prime Minister, he can go there and grant whatever wishes a person may desire. So one prisoner would say, well, I wish we had more chapatis. This is an actual fact. It's a true story. It's not an exaggeration. And another person asked, well, I'd like a different color in my cell. And another person would ask, when asked, said, well, I want more blankets. Can you imagine? The Prime Minister's asking this prisoner, what is it that you would like? Well, I'd like to have more food. I'd like to have a better cell or better house, whatever. Oh, I'd like to have more blankets. Finally, he asked another prisoner, and the prisoner said, let me go. So the moral of it, of course, is that Krishna can do anything. There's no doubt. We have no doubt about that. Krishna can do anything. But we don't want to ask Krishna for more chains in this prison-like world. We don't want to approach the Lord for more chains, to tie us down in this and entangle us in this material life. So when we engage in devotional service, the purpose of devotional service is that we're asking Krishna, please free us from all of these entanglements. Not that we just become absorbed in understanding the rituals and the histories and or simply liberation. No, there has to be, it has to go beyond that. The Vedanta Sutra, of course, Srila Prabhupada points out, explains what happens, how devotional service continues beyond just liberation. So, this is what, at least I was understanding from Vyasadev's despondency, that he did not spend enough time describing the process of devotional service and the connection that the living being has with the personality of Godhead. And of course that will be addressed in coming verses. I wanted to also, I would be remiss if I did not say something on this day about our dear Lord Jesus Christ, today being Christmas, right? Srila Prabhupada did have some comments about Lord Jesus, and that he was a Shakti Vaishnavatar. And although he's not mentioned in the Shastras, we afford all obeisances onto him because he offered his whole life to service to God. And so we appreciate that example. And we take that example to follow and not to imitate. Of course, Jesus Christ may have done so many things, as have so many great sages and great devotees in our disciplic line. But the example is there to follow. Not that we, again, imitate. Mahajano Yenikadasa Panta. We are there. Our position is to simply follow in the footsteps of such great souls in how they've given up their lives for spreading Krishna consciousness and spreading the Word of God or the devotional service to God. And instead of absorbing oneself in so many distractions and useless things which are not very fulfilling, just as here, of course it's a crude example, but Srila Vyasadeva was not feeling fulfilled. So that lack of fulfillment is there when we don't give ourselves fully to Krishna's service, fully to the service of the spiritual master, and fully in the service of the holy name. Hare Krishna. Any questions or comments? Brigapati Prabhu? Brigapati Prabhu?
Thank you for a nice class.
Hare Krishna.
On that last point you made about, you're talking about Jesus Christ and how he said he's not in the scriptures. Actually, Prabhupada put him in the scriptures.
Yeah.
We just read this morning, Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd canto, 2nd chapter, text 36 in the purport. Prabhupada referred to him along with Muhammad and a couple other people I can't remember, as one of the great preachers, done a lot of service, and like that. So. But also, as I was hearing your class, I was hearing you emphasizing, nicely explaining, emphasizing the importance of the Acharya giving accurate, clear, easy to understand information about the most important thing, which in this case, in Srila Vyasadev's case, was, devotional service. And that he understood, and Narada Muni brought it to his attention, as we're going to hear in a couple of days, very quickly, that he neglected to broadcast directly the glories of the Lord. So in the same way, I just was reflecting on the importance of that, and how in the absence of that, catastrophic things happen. Like, for instance, right now, the vast majority of the Christian world is celebrating Christmas, and they think it's the birthday of Jesus Christ. Well, actually, not crackpots, but mainstream Christian scholars are very doubtful that this is actually the birthday of Jesus Christ. The only two references in the New Testament to the nativity, as they refer to it, appear in Luke and Matthew. And in Luke, it explains that Jesus Christ, when he was born, the shepherds were in the fields. And in Judea, the shepherds are not in the fields, taking care of their flocks in this time of year, because it's cold, it's rainy, and it's inclement weather, so they don't do it. And in Matthew, it describes that at the time, just when Mary was pregnant with Jesus Christ, on the order of Augustine, there was the first census, and they had to travel to Judea to register. And that also wouldn't have been in the winter, it's described, because the roads were very poor and the weather conditions, they wouldn't have that, census at that time. So it's very doubtful that Jesus Christ was born at this time. But you see, when the parampara, when you don't have accurate knowledge, you wind up getting a day like this.
Yeah.
They're celebrating the birthday of Jesus Christ with nothing to do. There's no correspondence to the date, and the way it's observed. What does that have to do with the life and teachings of Jesus Christ? As you describe in your class, a gold rush pandemonium, killing all sorts of innocent animals and eating them. What does that have to do with the life and teachings of Jesus Christ? So, as many classes we've heard in the Rantra, in particular, has given a few classes about the importance of don't change anything. We've got to keep everything. Really protect the teachings. It's very important, because otherwise you wind up with something like this 2,000 years later. People are just doing something that has really nothing to do with the spiritual life, the pure devotional service of Jesus Christ.
Nothing. They're celebrating, but it's not a day of a celebration for turkeys. For instance, in England,
the turkeys aren't celebrating.
Today is Turkey Day for England. Everybody, they eat millions and millions. They kill millions and millions of turkeys on Christmas Day. This is their celebration. There's so many inaccuracies. Srila Prabhupada also comments how, although he doesn't give much importance to it, he talks about the Aquarian Gospel and how Jesus was spent time in the East. Even in Srinagar, they have some tomb there that they celebrate as the tomb of Jesus. That he didn't actually die and rose. He may have, but he definitely didn't die there, and was somehow there appeared in Kashmir. There's so many inaccuracies that, like you say, if you don't hear from a bona fide disciplic succession, from authorized sources. Srila Parasara was an authorized source. Srila Vyasadeva is an authorized source. We're getting knowledge from authorized personalities. But where is this authorized knowledge coming from? The unfortunate Judeo-Christian tradition. It's very, very questionable. And people, as a result, like you say, they speculate and they create all kinds of concoctions.
It's the opposite of a spiritual day. Imagine if we started celebrating Vyas Puja by going out and eating a lot of meat and wasting a lot of money. What would, it's the opposite of a... Anyway, you get the idea.
Thank you. Maharaj?
So it's very important that we understand the whole goal, the direction, the purpose, and the result of Lord Jesus Christ. He not only knew the 10 commandments, but he had 2 other commandments which he considered to be more important. And those are the same commandments that we ourselves try to live by. You should love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. And in addition to this, you should love your neighbor as yourself. So this is his main point, this is his main principle, and if we all try to remember him for that particular commandment, and try our best to follow it, then we will be properly directed.
Sachinandram Prabhu, last question.
Thank you, Naikatma Prabhu. You were speaking so nicely about authorized and hearing from authorized authorities, authorized sources. Now, we know that the Mahabharata, one of the chapters in Mahabharata is the Bhagavad Gita. So I know that's authorized. But I've always found it to be a bit of a challenge where to quote and speak from Mahabharata, the stories from Mahabharata. Because I've never heard Srila Prabhupada in my studies of his books and listening to lectures, I've never heard of extensive, how can you say, like him speaking. Commentary on that. But yet we speak about, we speak from Mahabharata sometimes, and it's just, I try to refrain from that just because I don't know what is, exactly like from the source or bona fide. And so could you clear that up for me, please?
No, I can't. No, I've never heard Srila Prabhupada authorize a particular translation. But if you go throughout Srila Prabhupada's books, he does comment, or he incorporates in his presentations aphorisms or examples or incidences that happened in the Mahabharata, and combines it with his presentation, whether it's a lecture or whether it's a purport. But I've never heard Srila Prabhupada authorize any particular translation of the Mahabharata. But he quotes from it. He uses it as a source. That I've heard. Bigupati?
Can I say one? First of all, I'd like to confirm your statement regarding Srila Prabhupada not giving any particular version. And it is mentioned in the Veda base, and I did look it up, and I did see it with my own eyes. When one of the artists had asked Srila Prabhupada, which version can you recommend us to read? And Srila Prabhupada directly stated, I cannot recommend any particular version. That was his statement, and it is found in the Veda base. Second of all, I'd like to just add that many devotees may not know it, but there are at least 100 different Sanskrit versions of the Mahabharata. We're not talking about English now. Sanskrit versions from which English and different languages are derived. So Mahabharata has come a long way. There have been a lot of additions, subtractions, modifications, etc. Of course, there is what is called the critical edition, which was produced by a body of scholars in India. And what they did is they took all of these different editions and they tried to put together one edition which contained all the different pastimes that were similar in all these different books and make it into one book. But even then, they stated, we cannot be clear or sure that this is what Vyasadeva himself wrote, unless Vyasadeva himself were to sit down and say, I wrote that, I didn't write that, I wrote that, that's mine, no, not that either. So there's a certain amount of doubtfulness, but that should not dissuade us from the fact that there's so much truth, there was so much guidance, there's so much direction, and there's so many means of becoming absorbed in Krishna and the Pandavas and the truths that by which they live, by which they work, and which they teach us by example, so many wonderful things. So what I'm trying to say is, in spite of all the doubt that I mentioned, we should not be discouraged. If it weren't so great, Srila Prabhupada would not have so quoted it over and over and over.
I think that's the main point. There's not a single book that a realized soul has given us, but there are sentences and quotes and paragraphs that Srila Prabhupada has quoted, and that's coming from a realized source, so we can accept that.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Bigupati Prabhu.
So I was going to ask this make this as a statement, but I'll ask as a question. So then, are we safe to accept what we hear Prabhupada say when he's, relating stuff from the Mahabharata as perfect.
Yes.
Like, for instance, there's that story where Duryodhana accuses Bhishmadev of he's not trying his best. He's
Right.
not fighting his hardest because he has affection for the Pandavas. Now, that doesn't appear in the Srimad Bhagavatam. That's from the Mahabharata. But I've heard Prabhupada tell that story in about 6 different lectures. So,
That's
are we
pure.
safe to accept that as being
I would say yes.
okay?
It's coming from his mouth.
So whatever you get from Prabhupada, from the Mahabharata, that's that's Shastra, that's
Yeah.
perfect. Okay.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.